With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin. The Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Boston, and similar protests have been getting quite a bit of press lately, both on the national and local level. And the movement is gaining ground with smaller scale protests cropping up here on Cape Cod. Protesters made their voices heard in Falmouth last week and also on the Village Green in Hyannis this past rainy Friday afternoon. On this morning's edition of Barnstable This Morning, I spoke with both the Chief of Police, Paul McDonald, and Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf to get their perspectives on these protests. Chief McDonald talked with us about his experience at Friday's event. He also filled us in on the police's role in keeping the peace at this and other types of protests.
It was a similar gathering that's going on right across the country. It was characterized, it was advertised as Occupy Hyannis. And as you just stated, it rained most of the day Saturday, but it started to clear up right around 4 o'clock, which was a scheduled start time for the protest demonstration, whatever you want to call it. And about 4 o'clock, between 4 o'clock and 4:30, approximately 70 individuals did show up, very orderly. From our standpoint, it looked like it consisted of 3 distinct groups. One group representing Occupy Hyannis, one group was Veterans for Peace, and another group were protesting the war in Afghanistan and Iraq.
So, Chief, and obviously you said a pretty peaceable demonstration. Is there concern at all when a large number of people gather in a public place like this?
Absolutely, but it is their right to do so. You know, this was a very orderly group. They got there between 4 and 4:30. They first went to the bandstand. They all got together there. There was a few people had some few comments made. After that, they lined up and they orderly marched up Town Green. And they went up onto the sidewalk. And then what they did, we thought they were going to maintain a presence at the Town Green, but what they did, they took a right on Main Street. They walked in an easterly direction up to Old Colony Boulevard, crossed back over to the other side of Main Street, then walked in a westerly direction on Main Street. You know, and I'm just trying to gather support for their cause.
Of course, Chief, we've been hearing a lot about the larger protests, of course, on a much grander scale
Right.
in Boston and New York, where there have been a number of arrests. And earlier you mentioned, of course, that, you know, and as we know, we do have a right to assemble and a right to peaceably demonstrate. But when does it cross the line between peaceable demonstration and, you know, time for police intervention?
It crosses the line when you start interfering with other people's rights and property rights. You know, I'll just use a case up in Boston as an example. You know, everybody was allowed to demonstrate up in the city of Boston where they were instructed to participate. You'll be in this general area, which is a public place. Sometime during that, 3 or 4 days into it, they moved it into a private part of the property, which then you're violating other people's private rights. You know, when you ever demonstrate, you certainly have a right to get up and say what you want to say and peacefully demonstrate, but you can't interfere with the movement of traffic, either pedestrian or motor vehicle traffic. You can't interfere with someone's private rights, you know, and you have to obey all rules, regulations, and ordinances. You know, our concern at Town Green, a lot of people, they were planning on camping out. Well, our Town Green is clearly posted, no trespassing after 9 p.m. In the town of Barnstable, there is an ordinance prohibiting camping throughout the entire town of Barnstable.
Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf is rather passionate about this issue. As a member of the Committee on Labor, Workforce and Development, he's been working on ways to strengthen the economy and develop sustainable jobs. Wolf headed down to the Village Green Friday. He shared with us his experiences and also his perspective on the message as a whole.
Well, I went down. There was a good group of, I would say probably 75 people or so. And, you know, we've heard a lot about the protests, but both talking to the folks there and then sort of, you know, having some follow-up afterwards. I really think, you know, obviously the protests are what's getting the news, but I think we can't lose sight of what it is that people are actually talking about. And, you know, I think it really does reflect, and this is what I heard at the rally on Friday, that the status quo just isn't working anymore for too many people. And I think, you know, you've heard the criticism, I'm sure, Sarah, that the message is not articulated and there's no real ask or agenda from this group. And I think that's, you know, partially true because at this point I think people are just saying, you know, the status quo has moved the ladder up so far that too many people can't even get to the bottom rung anymore. Because there's a disconnect between what we say we are as a country and then what people's experience are. I think the word for that is cognitive dissonance, which is that when we talk about being a place where everybody should have access to an education, that allows them the opportunity to succeed in this society. And then we've made education so expensive. And on the public side, we've cut enough from it to make it, it's still a great education you can get in Massachusetts, but we still are not as committed to it as I think we need to be. So, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what we say we want to be for the middle class that everybody keeps talking about, and then what the experience is for those people.
Right, and that's something we've seen a lot in the protesters is recent college grads who are, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt and are concerned because they can't find a job. Now, I will say, some of them who are holding up the signs saying, I can't believe I'm this much debt, I thought I was going to get a job. I mean, granted, college education isn't a guarantee that you'll be able to find a career, but again, our job market should be such that people should be able to find lucrative careers upon graduating.
Well, and again, I think this is not about what has to be. This is about what we want to be as a community. It's sort of, I don't think this is a fait accompli. I think it's really a great opportunity and a great time for us to look in the mirror and say, in the last generation, certain trends and certain things have happened in our society which have had an impact for the people at the very top and consequences for the people in the middle. And I think, if nothing else, these protests give us an opportunity to look at that and then have that discussion as a community. And I think that's a very healthy thing.
Great. So, Dan, of course, as a legislator, what can you take from these demonstrations, and how can you work to try and make things better for those of us in the middle class?
I think that is the great question. And as I drive to Beacon Hill today, that's a question that I'm going to really start engaging with other legislators, because I think that to some degree our government is looking at this and saying, well, these people have a legitimate point, and yes, there are some inequities that have gotten worse in the last 30 years or so, but not really making the connection that the one institution we have to sort of address this, if we want it addressed, is our government. So I think we need to look at legislation, and again, specifically from my committee, which is Labor and Workforce Development, are we committing the resources to really build a skilled workforce in those sectors of our economy that we have defined as growth sectors? And specifically for the case you and I have talked about it before, there's energy, as defined by retrofits, efficiency, conservation, small-scale renewable projects. Do we have a workforce that needs to take advantage of that opportunity? Because there are certainly opportunities there. So, structurally, as we have seen sort of the disparity of wealth emerge and grow in the last generation, it's made even those mid-skill level jobs difficult to support a family on. And, we have to look for ways to address that as government. And, part of that has to do with investing. The governor and even the president has said over the last couple of years, it's about education, innovation, and infrastructure. And, government needs to be involved in all of those. And, the last period of time on Beacon Hill, we've been talking about things like gambling casinos, like pension reform, like municipal health care reform, a lot of things that have tried to make our budget healthier, but I don't think have addressed some of the structural issues for the middle class that we keep talking about.
With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.